All right. So welcome to week two. Week two, we are going to be talking a little bit more about the development of childhood development, early infant and childhood. So we're going to get into some genetics, and there's a lot in this book it might seem a little bit overwhelming with genomes and phenotypes and all sorts of biological technology in there. I'm not going to go too much into the weeds with the biology of this, but I do want you to understand what genetics, what the role that genetic plays on cognitive development and social development, and it really plays into a big part as to who we become. So anyway, we're gonna go into all that right now, but I just want to go through and kind of show. Some of you have done some extraordinary work with these questions, and I just wanted to share a couple of those with you. Okay. So if you're looking at Packback, of course, this is the screen that you would get into. So all I really wanted you to really answer this week was my question I think it's all the way down here at the bottom. Maybe not. But my question was just, how does childhood development play into your career and your majors? And some of you really went above and beyond and kind of got a sense of what it's like to make some of these questions, and they're really, really well thought out and put together. Some of my other general psych classes, they took my instructions to the letter and just answered my question. They didn't really go out and try and do that, but many of you did this, and that's really awesome. So as you can see, what some of these good posts look like are: how can teachers utilize Skinner's operant conditioning if they are no longer face-to-face? Okay, so that's a good question by Rhiannon, I believe. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. But as you can see, now she's utilizing, she moved a little bit further in the textbook, because actually maybe not. I think that might have been briefly covered in chapter 1. But I think when we get to chapter 4 or 5, I believe, we're going to start talking a little bit more about operant and classical conditioning. So anyway, this student used the book, right, and talked about Skinner's operant and formed it into a good question. This person also went through and described where they found this information, what some of the contexts were, especially with operant conditioning, and just really let you know where this came from, okay? And then, of course, cited the source. Now, again, I'm not going to be super picky. I would prefer that you use APA citations in here, but that's okay if you don't, okay? I mean, the goal here is to just make sure that you're getting as many points as possible. So as you can see down here, this person earned a total of 90 curiosity points. So the higher the points, you want to be, for this class, I believe, above 40 or 45 points. So you get those by forming a good question, giving a good background of where that's from, and then, of course, citing it, okay? And that's where you're going to maximize your points. I know I got a couple questions from some of you that may have had your post moderated. Sometimes that happens if we don't put a source, okay? So just make sure that you're getting a source in there, because they might moderate it and have you do it again, okay? But yeah, some really good work with that. So I'm very pleased at how well Packback is going. This is my first semester using Packback, and so far I'm pretty pleased with what it's producing. Okay. All right. Any questions on Packback? Before we move on. Going once, going twice. All right. So moving on. So for this week, again, any questions you have regarding Revel or Packback registration, they're in news and announcements. So I know this is a really long welcome text, but if you go to where I have course information, week 1 course information. Here's your Revel link. That's the correct one. And then Packback. So just go through these settings, and our access code for our community is going to be this here for when you register. Okay. But if you don't have current registration, or you don't have a login, email this company or this help desk, and they'll get in contact with you to let you know what you need to do. Okay. All right. Any questions on that? All right. So for this week, pretty straightforward. As you can see, week 2 looks very similar to structure with week 1, where we have the overview, the resources, the discussion, and the assessments, right? So overview, pretty straightforward. Just read up a little bit on genetic basis of child development, a quick little introduction. And then within resources here, I posted a couple of videos. Now we really hit hard on twin studies and nature versus nurture this week. So in fact, I think your assignment has to do with nature versus nurture. So just be aware of where these videos are, and you can watch them as you see fit. Okay. Discussion, of course, Packback, one question, develop one question, one of your own, and then answer 2, and that's by Sunday midnight for both of those. So you have some time this week. Recommend, I had a couple of you that said that you didn't have enough time or you forgot. Do it early in the week, so that way I was a little lenient this week, but I'm going to have to stick to our, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen with you. Oh. Why aren't you all letting me know this stuff? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, just making sure. All right. So for this week, quiz 2 again, due on Sunday. Nature versus nurture assignment. This will be due Saturday, so be aware. I do want you to have your assignments in on Saturday, and I do that just for basically I don't want everything lumped up on Sunday. So we're going to be turning a lot of stuff on Sunday, and I don't want to overwhelm you. So I figured maybe if I broke it up and had it on a different day, that might portion it out for you. Okay. So pretty simple. So for this one, actually, I may have to switch to student view here. I will have to switch to student view. So that way you can see what I'm seeing, or I can see what you're seeing. So for this week, you're going to click on this assignment, watch the video, gene environment interaction. It's not, it is nature versus nurture. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, if not today, probably on Thursday. But just talk to your own experience. Now, for each one of these assignments, I may be asking you for your own experiences on these, but try and tie them into either literature that's out there or your textbook or something, because again, we're not experts just yet. We're becoming experts, but until we are and we have our own theories published, we have to really base our knowledge and how we view these topics through the lens of the experts. So use your textbook, use other sources if you want, and then give them credit for that as you cite them and cite your sources in here. Only 1 to 2 pages, I think, for this. Yep, 1 to 2 pages. And then when you're done, you just click on upload. Now, I will tell you, I've heard that there have been some issues with some of the browsers, namely Safari. So if you're a Mac user and you have Safari, or if you're trying to upload it from an iPad, I know that you might experience some issues. If that's the case, if you're on an iPad, try it on a laptop, borrow somebody's computer or something, and try and upload it there. If you are running Safari and it's not working, mine works, but I guess for some people it hasn't been working. So all you have to do is just click upload, and it should give you the option to pick your file, or you can drag and drop it into this text box and it'll upload it for you. Okay. All right. Any questions on the assignment? Assignment number 2.
I don't have a question on the assignment, but I have a question about something that was on the overview for like this week.
Are you talking about the start here?
It said on there that we had to read the article, but I couldn't find, I don't know what article
Oh,
it was talking about.
blocking serotonin. My apologies. Yep. Again, yeah. So that was one that I had on here and that I had removed. I'll take care of that. In fact,
Okay, so we don't have to worry about that?
Yeah, don't worry about that. Sorry.
Okay.
Good catch. Profile. In fact, I'm going to take care of that right now. So it is no longer an issue. Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right, just give me a minute here to update that. So, because as soon as sometimes I make notes and sometimes I don't, but I don't want to forget about that. Okay, that's very important. All right, so that is gone. All right, so for this week, for our group project. So again, going into content, what does course schedule say? Yeah. Assessments. So what we're going to be doing for our group project now, we're not actually doing anything with groups this week. All I'm going to be doing is getting a diagnostic from each of you to figure out what groups to put you in. And if and of course ask some other questions so I can properly match you with other people in the group. So all you got to do is by Sunday night, get into this. Hopefully this will, okay, I'm going to have to see, stop share. Have we gone over this? I'm seeing some heads shaking yes, some no. Okay, so we'll just go over this here briefly. All right, so this is your diagnostic. You can download this, you can print it, you can write on it, you can highlight it, whatever you want, as long as you indicate to me one of these 3 options when you submit it. So if you pick one, you're gonna give me as many group members as you possibly can, and I'm gonna do my best to get these groups together. Now, very important, if you choose, like Jane Doe and John Smith want to be on the same team, the same group, then make sure that they match exactly. So I have one of each from both of you that have the same names on here, because if there's any discrepancies, I'll probably just ignore that list. Like, for example, if I get a list from somebody that's got 5 people listed, and then I go to one of those other people that have that same sheet, but they don't have anybody else listed, I'm going to assume that that person was not notified, and therefore I'll probably make a decision to just disregard this. So very important, make sure if you have team members, they're aware that you're listing them and that they're listing the same thing. So I need one of these sheets from everybody in the class, okay? Not just the group. So once you upload that, once you select that, fill those names out. If you don't care, or if you don't have a group, go ahead and select option number 2. So option number 2 will just give me permission to go through and find you a group based on what you answer down here. So anybody that picks options 1 and 2 to be in the group, I am going to ask that you go through this. Now, this doesn't have to be essay format. I don't need a whole lot of information in here. I just need some basic information to give me an idea of how well you're going to fit into these groups, okay? If you elect to not have a group, and hopefully nobody here wants that, because they'll be missing out on some good fun and potential for an A in the class, but go ahead and indicate that you're picking number 3. And either digitally sign or just do something to acknowledge that you understand that option 3 for opting out of groups will give you the highest possible grade of a C. Okay, that's if you meet all the other criteria.
Wait, I filled out
I got a
this sheet.
question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I already filled out this sheet and I signed it anyway, but I have my team members.
Okay.
just thought we had to sign it no matter what.
Okay, that's fine. As long as, but you indicated that you have team members, right?
Yeah. And I
Okay.
filled out like the about myself thing. I just literally I saw the signature and I was like, I guess we just have to sign it no matter what.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. No, if you did sign it, that's not an issue. I just want to know that if you are picking 3, that you acknowledge that. But I mean, if you indicated that you're picking 1 or 2, then you'll be fine. I'll assume that that's the case. And if you did sign it, no big deal. But I am particularly just looking at people that are picking 3, that they do sign it, just so they acknowledge. Okay.
Well, I have a question.
Sure. Go ahead.
So you know that we picked like option 2. Do I like just highlight option 2, or
Yeah.
like okay?
Yeah, just highlight it, circle it, put an X on it, something. Just let me know, somehow indicate that's the one you're picking, okay?
Okay.
All right. Where can I cannot find this diagnostic. Still, okay. All right. Alexander, are you able to find it now? Okay. All right. So once again, let me go back into this. Once again, if you're new to D2L, a majority of the time we're going to spend are in these 2 tabs, course home and content. Okay. So under content, week 2, assessments, diagnostic. Okay.
Wait, I just have one more question.
Sure. Go ahead.
So just to clarify, for this week, all we have to do is the nature versus nurture, the quiz, the project one, that sheet to fill out, and the paperback.
Packback. Yes. Mhm.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's it.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I felt like I saw a different assignment yesterday, like another one, but I might have confused it with a different class. So I just wanted to like clarify that's all we had to do.
Okay. Okay. No worries.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Any other questions before we move on? Okay. All right. All right. So let's talk about parenting and what makes the greatest success for a child to thrive in the world. Because our goal, right? Our goal as human beings, not only as caregivers and parents and professionals, but as human beings, we want to achieve the best version of ourselves that we can do, that we can possibly achieve, right? And we get that from a very young age. We get that through genetics. We get that through our culture. We get that through our attachment with our parents. So all these things play into this developing human that we see later on in life. And sometimes it turns out wonderfully. Sometimes it turns out great. We're successful. We feel good. But sometimes not so much, right? Maybe there are some other things that are lacking. Maybe some kind of cognitive impairment, or maybe somebody's facing some kind of mental health disorder, or even addiction. There are many things that could be that could happen through the trajectory of a person's life that leads them into an area that's not so great. So we're going to take a look at how some of those things happen that way, okay, and how either cultural or family values or attachment or even genetics play into that. So what I would like to start out with here is a little team building. I want to get everybody to maybe start a discussion on what kind of parenting style, or what kind of parent you would see yourself as. And some of you may have differing views, okay? Why do we want families? That's the question. We're going to answer 2 questions, actually. Why do we want families? And what are some obstacles to achieving those families? And you can either talk about your own experiences or your own insights, or you can talk about maybe somebody that you know and why they want families, okay? So I'm going to break you off into groups of about 4. and go ahead and discuss amongst yourselves some of those reasons. So we're all clear, right? Two things we're answering are why some people want families, what are some reasons, and what are some obstacles to having those families. And it could be anything you can come up with. All right. So give me a minute here to put you in breakout rooms. And I'll give you about just 5 minutes to talk about it. Okay.
If you're talking, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. So what are some reasons that you came up with that we have families?
One reason in the group that I was in with, I don't want to just say the group I was in, I want to say who I was with, but I forget names sometimes. I know one was Megan.
Okay.
And just have to find her.
Kelly.
Kelly. Thank you. Kelly is actually a mother. And we came up with a reason might be like, because that's just kind of the next step in life after college and after like getting a job and finding someone. That's kind of like the next step. You start a family and then you just kind of go on from there.
Okay. So kind of like a social status maybe, right?
Hmm.
Like that's what we're supposed to do after we get ourselves financially ready and get through school and get a job. Maybe that's the time to have a family, right?
Yeah.
So social status. Okay. All right. Or status quo, or however you want to call that. Okay. What are some other reasons?
Support.
Support. What do you mean by support?
Like, not only financially, like if you're with a family, like sometimes being with a spouse can help the family income, but also like emotional support, like having somebody there that's always,
Okay.
and like family is supposed to always have your back.
Okay. All right. So we learned that from a young age, right? Interestingly enough, we are pack animals, and I hopefully you understand what I mean by this. But when we look at it from an evolutionary perspective, we as humans know that we cannot survive without the support of others. Okay. And some people may argue that. They may say, well, I know plenty of people that live out in the middle of Alaska and live by themselves. Well, kind of, sort of, they're not 100% dependent on themselves. They still go into civilization once in a while and get things that they need or things that they want. But for the most part, many of us acknowledge and recognize that we are pack animals and we need others to survive. And if I'm hearing you correctly, that's kind of what you mean by that is sometimes we just need people around us, and what better way than to create our own type of people, right? Our own people, our own support. Is that what you meant by that?
Yeah. And not
Okay.
only emotional, but like physical too, because like most of the time, if you're sick or anything like that, like no one's truly gonna care for you the way that your family does.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So again, not only emotional, but physical support. Okay. Interestingly, physical support. So, care to share if you are okay with it? Like, how many of you, maybe just speak up or say here or something, have siblings over 8, more than 8 siblings in your family?
Oh, more than 8?
Me,
Okay,
I do. I got like 9.
you got 9. Okay, all right.
Wait,
Not,
like 9 siblings?
y-
Yeah, like on my dad's side, not my mom's. I only got 3 on my mom, but my dad got a lot of kids.
okay. So if I asked that question 50 years ago, I think just about everybody in this room, in this, well, we wouldn't have had Zoom back then, but everybody in the room probably would have answered 8 or more. Not everybody. I mean, a good majority of people. So why? What has happened that we've had larger families in the past per capita, and that's really scaled down to modern times? What
I
was going on in the past?
I think like the income has changed. Like the price to buy for a house 50 years ago would obviously be a lot cheaper than what it would be now.
Mhm.
And like the economy has changed so much in 50 years. And I feel like a lot of people are materialistic now, and like a lot of people care about um I guess like their social class, and back then everything was like about family and like dinners together, and like a lot has
Mhm.
changed like with lifestyles.
Yeah. Well, and you brought up a good point there with lifestyles. What did we have? What do we have now that we didn't have back then?
Yeah,
We have access to, what's that?
I feel like back then a lot of the women would stay home to care for your
Yeah.
children. So you were able to have as many kids because there was always someone home to care for them.
Okay. So,
We also have, oh, sorry.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we also have access to vaccines and better medical treatment than we did back then.
Yeah. Okay. So back then it was a little bit more acceptable to be isolationists because you didn't really go anywhere. You tended to your farms, and that's kind of what I was going towards. And you mentioned single working family households back then were pretty widely accepted, right? Most specifically, they would have the males. The father, patriarch, would go out, get jobs, multiple jobs in some cases, work hard in the mines, come home and bring the money. And of course, the mother was able to stay home, right? That's really shifted. And a lot of it has to do with the economy. Maybe things are a little bit more expensive, and maybe we want to achieve a certain social class. But in order to do that, it's really accepted that we have both members of the family working. In some cases, even the kids contributing to the family, right? But back then, it was a little bit more simple. They had farms, and what better way to tend to those farms than hiring people? What's a better way to do that? Have lots of kids, right? So again, back to economical support back then was ideal. Maybe not so much now. Now, maybe, and we are seeing a little bit of a decline with the amount of kids that parents are having these days, right? We're also seeing a lot of shifts in.
On school.
Yeah, somebody unmuted there. Okay. We're also seeing a lot of shifts in adoption situations, right? A lot of gender role expectations have shifted. So instead of having a male and female caregiver situation, we might see more of a male caregiver, which biologically they can't have kids. So we're seeing more of adoption, and we're going to talk about that. What adoption is, some of the benefits to it, some of the drawbacks, as we get through some of these chapters. Did anybody else want to give me another reason for families? Did they have something a little bit different?
So in my group, I know we all kind of had the same answer, that we all just knew we wanted families.
Okay.
So maybe considering, chapter 2 in genetics, maybe there's some genetic evolutionary, push behind that makes you want to have a family.
Biology, I love it. Good stuff. Absolutely. So within most of us, and again, you're going to hear me refer a lot to evolutionary psychology. Now, evolutionary psychology doesn't necessarily believe in evolution, but what we look at are stronger traits being carried forward through genetic reproduction, okay? And basically, the strongest gene survives. And we do know that adaptation does exist within species, and we can kind of say that we can see that with humans, right? Back in the day, if you looked at earlier skeletons of humans remains, we had a much sharper slope on our foreheads, we had bigger brows, we had big gangly teeth, probably big noses, right? We used all those for tearing through our meals, for finding our meals, right? Those served purposes. As time went on and we became more industrious, we didn't need those features. So those weren't important for survival, and therefore those genes didn't carry on. But in order to be able to perpetuate our species, we have to procreate. We have to want to procreate. And according to evolutionary psychologists, any species that does not contain that gene to desire to have sex and procreate will not pass that gene, that desire on as well, okay? So that's kind of the idea. So we are biologically driven to propagate our species, aren't we? Okay, so good point, very good point. All right, so I think we got a pretty good list there. What are some obstacles maybe in your groups that you found to having families? What are some issues that came up?
We said that the divorce rate in America has been extremely high and keeps going up. And I know for me personally, having divorced parents, it makes me nervous of getting married and having a family and stuff like that, just seeing how it happens a lot.
Okay, so that's actually really good. I don't think anybody's ever brought that. So kind of a fear of what it would mean to have kids and go through a divorce.
I think I have one.
Okay, go ahead.
There's a lot of abuse going on at home, like with children.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so what would that be as an obstacle? How would that be an obstacle to having families?
I guess it's not like you can choose what family you go in, but I forgot what I was gonna say actually.
I think I know. I think I know.
Sorry.
So kind of what, and I didn't catch her name, but kind of the fear, like if you're in a bad situation and a bad relationship, that might cause a fear to have children and bring them into that situation. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, and that's a valid reason. Okay, now you may think, like for example, show of hands, how many of you think that child abductions have gone up over the last 30 years? Okay, quite a few hands. Believe it or not, and this kind of relates back to the abuse. Believe it or not, child abductions have gone down significantly over the last 30 years. But many of you, especially if you're closer to my age, I don't think we have many people in this class that are. But if you're in your 30s or 40s, you probably remember a time where you were able to explore the woods behind your house or something like that, or walk the streets, and there was really no worry of or no threat of somebody abducting you, right? Because of why wasn't that a threat back then? And it is now, especially if those numbers have gone down.
Phones, social media.
Social media. Okay. What do you, a little bit further, what do you mean by social media?
Like, I know, I don't know about like abductions, but I know like sex trafficking has been like a huge threat lately, because like now they're giving out text messages with like saying, oh, like your package is late, and there's like links, and if you press on it, like apparently they can track you and stuff. And I feel like that stems a lot from social media, because there's so many people that are like not who they say they are, and they will try to like text you or DM you and say like, oh, let's hang out sometime. And it could be like somebody you think that is normal. And then when you hang out with them, they could actually be like a sex trafficker or like,
Okay.
put you in a bad situation.
Okay. What do they call them? Do no gooder or something, right? Now, somebody that's out there to cause problems. I think what you were hitting upon there is the media. We hear about it more in the media, right? Because it's all around us. We see it in social media. We get texts on our phone when there's an Amber Alert. So we're constantly bombarding that. In our perspective, from our perspective, it feels like these numbers of abuse have gone up, or these numbers of abductions have gone up. Okay, when indeed the opposite is happening. We're just bombarded with this information constantly. So that kind of leads back to the fear, right? So if we think that somebody might be abusive, our standards of abuse have really gone up since 10, 20, 30, definitely 50 years ago, right? Spankings were the thing to do in school. You can't even I think grab a child's shoulder now, right? You get training on that. For many of those that are going to be educators. So, how this plays in, this kind of feeds into that fear, right? Okay, so that's some good answers here. Go ahead.
I was going to say with social media and everything, I feel as much as it's giving like awareness, like even the Amber Alerts and stuff, I feel like it's also like desensitizing us to that as well. Like I feel like, most people when they see an Amber Alert, they just kind of like look at it and then put the phone down. Like nobody's really like out in the streets looking. Like you don't get up and then start on a manhunt kind of thing. Like
okay.
People don't take it as of an importance anymore. So that could also be a bad thing too.
Yeah, I think I can relate to this because I lived in Harrisburg last year, and I don't know, many of you are probably from Philly or Harrisburg or bigger cities. Those Amber Alerts go off frequently, don't they? Like at least one or two a day. And it got to the point where I was trying to figure out a way to disable it on my phone because I would be in therapy with a patient or a client, and that thing's going off, and it's very disruptive. So I think what I'm hearing you saying is just with the media and constant bombardment, we're desensitized to this, right? Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you said that the child abduction rates have gone down. Does that mean child human trafficking, that doesn't count as an abduction?
Well, the thing is, child trafficking and abductions have been going on a long, long time. We're now aware of the extent of child trafficking, okay? And this kind of goes with abuse. Abuse has really, the reported number of cases of abuse have increased over the last 20, 30 years. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's happening more. It just means that we're aware of it more. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but our levels of our standards for abuse have really stepped up. So what used to be just standard discipline of kids is now in some forms, and I'm not going to say every case, but could be considered within the abuse range. So a couple things are happening there. Okay, so good question. Go ahead.
Going back to how abuse would be an obstacle, do you think that it would be an obstacle for a child? Because obviously children don't get to choose what family they're placed into. So maybe that might change the way that they view families of their own if they were in an abusive relationship with their parents or in that household.
Okay, so I'm going to put in here mental health issues, because that's an obstacle, isn't it? So somebody that gets into a relationship that is less trusting, that may deter them from having a family, or maybe they have families for the wrong reason and perpetuate. We do see that a lot happen within our communities. We see victims of abuse becoming aggressors of abuse as well. Now we're going to talk much more about that as we get into like PTSD and trauma. But anyway, some really good points here. Okay. really quickly. So what I'd like to do is just define what we're going to be looking at within the confines. Remove current page. Hold on a second. Within the confines of age groups that we're going to be looking at. Now, your last week's assignment was to name some people in your lives that you thought kind of fit physical descriptions or emotional descriptions of these age groups, right? So for this class, what we're going to be looking at a little bit more closely is some terms in the upcoming chapters. Prenatal, okay? So prenatal is the age group of conception to birth. Now I picked this range. I didn't pick this range, the book picked this range, but I picked this range for our developmental psychology class because it really plays a big factor into how a person develops. Now, why is that? What do I mean by that? How can the prenatal stage affect how we develop through
If the mom's abusing like drugs or alcohol, it's gonna affect the kid physically when they're born.
Okay, so nutrition, right? Chemical, ingesting chemicals, maybe stress levels, any kind of genetic markers, which probably won't get into today, but anything that she might have genetically or hereditary within her family, like could be diabetes, it could be Down syndrome or MS. You know, maybe it's they've got some kind of genetic thing that they have to consider before considering having a family, right? So that's going to be our prenatal phase. Our infant and toddlerhood is going to be birth to about 2 years, okay? And again, I think I said this last week, is when we look at these mile markers, and we're going to hear about like Piaget goes from 0 to 2 and 3 to 7, these are just rough estimates. So we could have an individual, we could have a child that is showing levels like cognitive and behavioral levels and intelligence at the infant and toddler, but maybe they're not quite, maybe they're 3 or even worse, 4. They're not meeting certain mile markers that really push them beyond the emotional maturity that they would need to be to go on to the next one, which would be early childhood. Early childhood, we're going to look at in the sphere of 2 to 6 years. Middle childhood, 6 to 11 years. Adolescence, 11 to 18 years. And then adulthood, 18 on up, okay? All right. Within this, we're going to be talking about basic issues in development. So how do we develop? We're going to talk about some of the theorists that have either a discontinuous or continuous look on development. I'm just going to abbreviate this. Well, maybe not. Discontinuous versus continuous. So what do I mean by discontinuous versus continuous? When we look at personality traits, we look at them as more of a continuous. So what we demonstrate, what we illustrate on our outside, how we project ourselves onto the world as a toddler, pretty much carries over a little bit later in some form or another into adolescence and adulthood, right? So if we're high energy and we are bubbly and happy, we're going to see traits of those within our personalities later on in life. If we're anxious or we're untrusting or we're startled easily, we're going to see that through traits throughout. So these would be examples of continuous. Now, discontinuous traits would be something similar to, trying to think of an example of object permanence, for example, when we talk about Piaget. So early in life, we don't understand the concept that things can exist if we don't see them. That's called object permanence. But as soon as we get a little bit older, we start realizing that just because something is covered up, and I got some great videos that demonstrate children that have difficulty time maneuvering this. But as we get a little bit older, we understand that. And that's called negotiating object permanence. And again, that's the one of the second phases of Piaget's model, which we'll talk about later, okay? Let's see, I do want to get into some of the contexts, but I want to cover them all, which we'll do Thursday. I do want to leave some time to talk to anybody that needs some one-on-one or has some additional questions. So I'm going to stop this here for today. All right, any questions before I end the class?
I thought I did.
Will you be?
Oh,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I'm still.
I had a question about the group work. Will you be assigning us that today?
No, it's due Sunday. The group diagnostic is due Sunday. Okay, so Sunday midnight, and then tomorrow. I'm sorry, next week, week 3, I'll be assigning groups. So I probably won't have it done until later on by the end of next week. But you don't have a group assignment due until the end of week 4 anyway, so you got a lot of time. Okay.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep.
My question was, I completed quiz 1. I probably should have emailed you instead of waiting until now. Is it always going to remind us? Because I had finished it at least like 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
And I just kept getting a reminder that, oh, you need to finish it. Do we have to finish it a certain number of times? Because even if we have it hundreds on it, no? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, and again, don't be very cautious of using that course schedule in the course calendar, because it sometimes is not, like for one of my classes, I don't even have anything listed as being due, and for some reason it's giving students an alert that something's due, and it's not. So it's an error on D2L's side. It's nothing. I don't think we're having any issues like that with our class, but yeah, all you need to do is get an 80. If you get an 80, it doesn't matter how many times you take it, really. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So any other questions before we end class? And like I said, I'm going to stick around. If you have some one-on-one questions, I can certainly do that.
I guess
Go
a
ahead.
question. Are these Zoom lectures mandatory to like show up to?
Nope.
Or they aren't? Okay. I
Nope.
just wanted to make sure I hadn't like missed class or anything like that.
Okay. Am I going to see you Thursday?
Yes.
Okay.
I also
All right.
have a question about Packback. Do you
Uh-huh.
want us to use a source every time
Yes.
that we make a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, and what should the source be like from? Just like
Could be your
anything like we
textbook.
read that kind of helped us with our question, or like something to help answer the question?
Yep. It could be your textbook. It could be an article that you found. Please no Wikipedia, but any other source that's credible, you're welcome to use. Okay.
This week I used a question. I just made it up. Is it okay if I didn't source that? I didn't cite that.
It may kick back for moderation. So if it does, just repost it with a source. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Wait, I have a quick question about the Pearson. What's the username and the password for it? Is it like the regular stuff that I signed in for ESU?
I think you have to create your own account for that.
Okay, and then I just type in my access code that came on the little like thing.
I believe so. I've never actually registered using that, but yeah, if you have the code, I think you create an account and then it'll ask you for your code, and then just enter that. Follow that link that's in D2L under news and announcements, and that'll lead you right to it. Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
One more question.
Sure. Go ahead.
For the Packback, I know the first week a lot of us probably just like made a question that wasn't really pertaining to the book at time. from here on out, are you wanting us to mostly just put questions that are pertaining to the chapter that we're in, or is it still okay if like every now and then
Would you like a
questions that-
Democratic or non-party?
As long as it's
So you just want to do
pertains
mayors?
to,
You just
as
want
long
to
as-
vote for the mayor?
Amber, you're unmuted.
yeah, we got somebody unmuted there. Amber. Okay, there you go. As long as try and stick to this week's topic. Like I said, I saw somebody that
So
had
you
Skinner
want to
in
do
there.
Democratic?
All right, I'm going to mute. Okay. I saw somebody that put Skinner in this week. That's perfectly fine. You know, we're going to be covering issues with Skinner, but as long as it has the flavor of being week 2 topic, that's all I really care about. Okay, and I'll go through, and again, we'll get better at this. This is not going to happen overnight. I'm well aware of that. So we'll get better, and I'll give you feedback as we go through this. Okay.
Okay.
All right. All right. I'm going to stop recording now.